Good morning, gasaholics. Hi, I'm here. It's Hot Rod Bob, and you've got gas. The morning edition. Hey, I hope you noticed that I'm posting some of the past gas, and we're putting them back on Facebook, but they're also on Tumble and Twitter, and you can catch all the past gas on YouTube as I get them loaded. Got about 20 of them loaded now. I'm starting to bring them back and searching for them and reposting them because a lot of people have asked me, what about this one or what about that one? Or, we heard you talked about this, and we've got the old past gas. I found a way of getting them and downloading them, and we're going to upload them to YouTube. I'm going to do as many as I can in a day. It takes some time, but I'm doing it for you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to your morning gas. I'm Hot Rod Bob. One of the things that was asked to me last night by Cassie Nunez, one of our followers here, and she's always on, was why are there crumple zones? And what are they for? And why does a car have to get totaled out after an accident? Well, one of the things is so you can walk away. Now, crumple zones are not anything new. Volvo came up with them years and years ago. As a matter of fact, they made their cars relatively safe by making the driver's compartment a separate structure. Now, it wasn't separated, but they structured it more rigidly than the front or rear of the car. Now, what happens in an accident? Well, there is crumple zones. They're made to bend or absorb the energy so your body doesn't have to. Now, safety has come a long way over the last few decades, and one of the reasons was, and as much as I hate to admit it, Ralph Nader. Yes, he was a safety advocate. Of course, he complained about a Corvair. He didn't complain about other cars, although the Corvair was not all that unique. Now, the reason the Corvair had some dangerous items to it was technology of the time. The collapsible steering column hadn't been invented yet. And in the case of a Corvair and a front-end collision, as low as that car was, it would crumple. Now, in this case, the crumpling wasn't planned, and the steering column was a solid shaft. Was that unusual? No, not at the time. The steering column that collapsed had not been invented yet. So what would happen is the vehicle would collapse, the vehicle would absorb the energy of the collision because the Corvair didn't have an engine up front. Someone trying to call. All right, so no engine up front, no substructure up front to support an engine, the weight of an engine. Therefore, the front of the vehicle was a bit on the light side. Was this unique? No. Were there other cars like it? Oh, yeah. Volkswagen, Porsche, Tatra. There were many cars, NSU, that were rear-engined cars that didn't have a strong front substructure because there was no engine up there to support. Now, the Corvair got noticed because of Ralph Nader, the guy who didn't even have a driver's license, didn't even know how to drive a car. But he became the expert on crash safety. Well, some of his information was correct, and some of his complaints were valid. The steering column issue on the Corvair was one of them, and from that came the collapsible steering column. Now, crush zones in the front of the car and the rear of the car were designed to absorb the energy of an impact. Unfortunately, with that impact, if those things collapse, the car usually is not repairable. But let's look at it this way. Did you want to be repairable? How would you like to be repaired? And I can give you an example, personal experience. I had a Chevy HHR, little panel truck. Loved that little thing. Wish I still had it. But I was involved in an accident 10 years ago. I hit the back of a pickup truck. I was doing about 20 miles an hour. Now, his bumper hitch, or trailer hitch, decided to impale my ABS braking system computer and the engine computer. Now, Generous Motors, in their infinite wisdom, put those in the front of the car. Yes, Alan, 67, 69 Corvairs did get upgraded and did start getting those things such as collapsible steering columns, and they were the cause of that collapsible steering column being developed. All right, so what happened was the car crushed a bit on the front. Didn't crush all that much. As a matter of fact, the car was repairable. but the area above the crush zones did crush, absorb the energy. I was only doing about 20 miles an hour and the car was totaled out. But I opened the door and I walked out of the car. Now, the car had airbags. The airbag did deploy. I sit far enough back. I don't sit up like this, with my hands on my arms bent over and stuff. I did not get hit by the airbag. And the other thing I do, and this was taught to me by Doug Herbert and his driving school called brakes. Instead of putting your hands at 10 and 2 like we were taught when we were younger, you put your hands at 9 and 3. The reason? Your car most likely has airbags now, unless you're driving an old car. Yes, Neil, we are doing great. And hi, Raphael, how are you this morning? But if you put your hands at 9 and 3, the airbag will deploy and not hit your hands. One of the problems that has happened with the use of airbags is people kept their hands on top of the steering wheel. The airbag would deploy. Boom. You'd burn your hands from you get road rash basically from the airbag opening up. And raise your hand. How many people actually think there's air in an airbag? Well, it's politically correct to say there's air in an airbag. Is there air in an airbag? No. An airbag opens up because of an explosion. Kenny Bunyan's on with us now. I was rear-ended in my 51 Vicky. Minor hit, but broke my back. But the car was an easy fix. Yeah, and he's quite right. Older cars, no car today, older cars had a full perimeter frame. Or in the case of 58 to early 60 Chevrolets, a cross frame or an X frame. That was a very rigid situation, except in the Chevrolet where it would flex to allow a better ride. It had nothing to do with safety or anything else. Why am I talking about crash test videos? No, I'm not talking about the crash test video you sent me. I didn't actually see the crash test, Cassie. Let's see what she says here. Oh, are you talking about the crash video I sent you? I wanted to cry when the classic car got hit. Okay, I didn't see that one, but I do remember what you're talking about. If it's the one you're talking about, it was about a 1960 Chevrolet hitting a Malibu, a current Malibu, and the Chevrolet collapsed. Because the Chevrolet's X-frame that came out in 1958 was not rigid. It provided no driver compartment protection. They went back to a perimeter frame because a perimeter frame was more rigid and protect the driver and the driver's compartment and the passenger compartment much better. Excuse me. So showing that is an example of what is wrong with that design. The good part about that design was it gave a better ride. That was the only thing it did. It also allowed you to sit lower in the vehicle because the driver's compartment could be lowered down where there was no frame rails intruding. They got rid of that, and that was one of the reasons they got rid of that. So crash safety comes in and is very important, front and rear. You want the car, believe me, you want the car to absorb the impact of a collision. You do not want to absorb the impact of the collision. When you absorb the impact of collision, you get hurt, whether it's internally or not. You can be bruised internally because you bounce around in the car. And if the car is rigid, something has to give. And believe me, your body is the first thing that will give. So crash zones have been put into cars. Volvo, like I said, was one of the early ones to do it. BMW, Mercedes. The Europeans got on board with this a lot sooner than the Americans did. The Americans did try, though. The Chrysler Airflow unibody vehicle, very strong compartment, passenger compartment. Didn't go over well. People didn't understand, didn't care for it. Now, it could have been the packaging. But up until that point, most cars had wooden frames inside the vehicle to frame out and keep the body rigid. Now, wood frames are not really the strongest thing that you want to have around you in case of an accident. There was no real accident planning at that point in time. You got to remember, seatbelts came about because of racing. Everyone thinks classic cars are tanks. All steel is safer, right? Wrong. All steel makes the car a little bit heavier, but it doesn't make the car safer. Now, a fender may not dent as easily, but the fender is not the issue. A strong fender is not a safety device for the passenger in the car. A fender is merely something that covers the tires. All right, so let's look at some of these things that have happened. Now, one of the things to look at, and this is one of the things I notice quite often, and people seem to not even think about. When the Mustang and the Camaros came out in the 1960s, they were very lightweight cars. One of the reasons the horsepower made those cars quick was because there was less weight to pull around. A Mustang weighed less than 3,000 pounds. Camaro came in around 2,900 pounds, depending on the options you put on it. Today, a Mustang and Camaro weigh 3,900 pounds. That's the weight of a full-size car back in the 60s. A Cadillac was 4,000 to 5,000 pounds. Did it make it any safer? No, not really. It had a lot of steel in it. There were no crumple zones. The frame was a perimeter frame, very heavy, as most old cars are. Is it stronger? Is it safer? There is a certain amount of safety in that. Good morning, Richard. Johnny Martinez, good morning to you, sir, Mr. Pinstriper Extraordinaire. And we got to get together for lunch again, maybe this week. Corey Weaver got T-boned. Let's see what he says. Got T-boned in his 91 Camaro by a Chrysler Imperial. The airbag worked, but got a light flash burn. The car was totaled, but he limped away. And Richard Candahead, good morning to you. And Hillbilly Mopar from Sweden says hello. Well, good morning to you. Or good evening to you. It's early evening for you, isn't it, in Sweden? Well, yes, the crumple zones are there. Now, the other thing that came into play in 1973 were door guard beams. Now, in race cars, we're used to having a roll bar around us and bars going forward to keep them rigid. Now, they also protect from side intrusion. If you look at a race car, there's a lot of bars on the side. In 1973, the door guard beams became mandatory. It's evening in Sweden. Well, good. Got some friends over there, and occasionally we talk to them in the evenings. Or evening for them, morning for us. The door guard beam went into the doors of the cars. That added weight. It also added intrusion protection. The outside door skin is merely cosmetic. Hello there, Bob Alford from Florida. And Scott Keogh is watching us now. Oh, more notes. Cassie Nunez. Her first Chevelle got rear-ended. The body crumpled. The only reason they salvaged it was because the frame was destroyed. Yep. And you could have straightened it out, but the cost to do that would have been greater. And that's why it was sold out, Cassie. They look at the cost of repair. And in the case of a crumple zone on a vehicle, the cost of repair. And again, the weight. Now, the weight is added because today's cars are unibody construction. The unibody construction can be more rigid and safer. When you had a body on frame, if you got into an accident and the frame was rigid and didn't give, the body would have to. And I've seen cars where they've actually come off their body mounts in a collision. And that is a problem because you're inside that body. So with unibody cars, they are able to brace the car in different areas of the driver's compartment. You don't see it, but it is there, and it's there to protect you. Door guard beams were in all of the 1970 Mopars. All right, so Chrysler was ahead of the game. And again, like I said earlier, Chrysler was ahead of the game with all steel body constructions, starting with the Chrysler Airflow and DeSoto Airflows at the time. One more thing that gets eliminated when building a stocker. Yeah, you pull those out because you want to save weight in the doors. Understand. So that's one thing to look at too. But unibody cars are stronger and safer. Corey Weaver, Saturn was a good example of having the door beam, a plastic door panel. Yeah, and the Fiero was the start of that type of body on frame type situation where the whole car was a frame. It's basically a unibody car, and the fenders and the doors and such are merely cosmetic. You could drive a Fiero or a Saturn without the body on it, and you could still be just as safe. The body is a skin. It is cosmetic. It is not a safety item. I had someone I know start arguing with me about the gas cap behind the license plate was a safety feature. No. A license plate has never been a safety feature, and putting the gas cap behind it was merely to hide it. Rebecca Cisnero, you rear-ended a Jeep Liberty with her '05 Scion. Airbags didn't go off. The sensor was damaged, but they totaled the car due to the engine. It had 600 miles on it. Yeah, now, you got to understand something. An airbag doesn't deploy merely because you have an accident. An airbag is got a germ or a bit of a computer system in it, and it is looking for a rate of deceleration, not a rate of deformation. So it's not looking for a deformed body. It is looking for a rate of deceleration for it to come out. Does it come out all the time? No. Rafael Noriega is saying 73 GM started with the Kelowna D design. Rafael, not sure what that is. Why don't you explain it a little bit further? Rebecca says she was hard on the brakes too. Yeah, you could have been, but by that point you scrubbed off enough speed and the car was tilted enough that your bumper possibly went underneath the bumper of the car in front of you, causing body damage. And that's what happened with me when I hit the truck from behind. The body damage and the computer damage and the electrical damage was what totaled out my car. Good morning, Craig Heidenthal. How are you doing today? Hey, Craig, I got to talk to you about something, but that's another subject altogether. All right, so the deformation of the body can be above the strength area. And in the case of my car, it was the core support, the hood, the front fenders, the top of the bumper. Now, I went underneath a pickup truck. I should have looked to see if he had one of those bumper stickers that says, if you can't stop, smile as you go under. I didn't. But anyway, that in my car was totaled out because of the cost of the electronics, the engine computer, the ABS computer, and the associated wiring that was damaged by his trailer hitch were the reasons my car was totaled. As I said, I could open the doors, no problem. I was doing 20 miles an hour, but I hit the ABS, I hit a diesel spill on the freeway. So hitting the ABS and diesel fuel, you don't slow down. You just kept on going, and I did, and I found his rear bumper quite effectively, actually. But the car did work. I was able to get out of the car. I had absolutely no injuries. The car was totaled. I replaced it with another HHR because of that, but as well as I found a better one, even though it lasted for a long time. So deformation, strength. The cars of today are heavier by size than the cars of yesterday. And it's because of the crash safety that's built in. Door guard beams, airbags. I'm not necessarily a big fan of airbags. If you're wearing a proper seatbelt, you won't hit the airbag. If you're sitting in the proper position, you won't hit the airbag. Forward. Now, the side impact airbags, the side curtains that come down, that's a whole nother story. And I like those because when you get hit from the side, your body moves in the direction that you got hit. So if you get hit this way, your body's going to go this way. What's alongside your head? A window. What happens? Concussions. And I've seen that. My son was in an accident when he was 17 years old. His car was damaged. It was totaled. The damage to the passenger was his head hitting the side window. Kenny Bunyan's talking about breakaway mirror mounts or motor mounts and firewalls designed that engines go under the floor instead of through the firewall. Yeah, those are a lot of other things that have come out. AAA doesn't like when you try to save a car. It's not that they don't like it, Cassie. They, as well as others, don't want an unsafe car put back on the road. And the question of whether it'll be repaired properly is what they're worried about, and the liability. If they give you back a car that has been considered totaled based on the dollar amount a car will need to be repaired, a lot of people will take shortcuts. Now, I found that in working for a manufacturer. I ran the customer relations line for a manufacturer. And one day we got a call from a dealer that said he's got a problem. This vehicle has got an ABS light, the anti-lock braking system coming on. And they can't figure out where the sensors are. Well, we found out that this car was made of two cars. Both had been totaled out. And an enterprising body shop welded the front half of one car to the back half of another car. The back half did not have ABS. The front half did. So the ABS light was on because it couldn't find the sensors for the back half of the car. That is why these cars were totaled out. Someone bought these as wrecked salvage, and they put them together. Doug Thorell, how about the breakaway engines that slide under the car? Yep, we talked about that. Not a bad idea. Keeps them from coming into the driver's compartment, intruding in there. And this saves on leg injuries. Christian Hanks, how are you doing this morning? So that's why the crash safety is there. The crush zones are there. And why more cars get totaled out these days than repaired. Your safety. And I'm all for that. And one of the things about driving our old cars is they don't have that built-in safety. Are you taking a chance? You're taking a chance anytime you get into a car. Are your chances of surviving an accident in an old car better than a new car? Depends on the accident. But in general, no. New cars are far more safer. Yes, Cassie, it sounds like a Frankenstein car, and that's why you don't buy a car with a salvage title, because that's what happens. Kenny Munyon, what about Mansfield dashboards? Mansfield dashboards? Yeah, they stick out quite a bit. You notice one of the first cars to have a dashboard that was recessed to keep the passengers and the drivers from hitting them in an accident was the Tucker. And the Tucker had a lot of safety features back then, including a windshield that popped out in the case of an accident. Now, you say, why would it pop out? Well, you got to remember, what's the thing that stops you? I've been stopped by one, the windshield. Is the windshield stronger than your head? In many cases it is. Cassie says, were the 5 mile per hour bumpers any good in the 70s? The 5 mile per hour bumper was not a safety item. That was something pushed by the insurance company to reduce their costs. That's all it was. And if you look at it and you read the NHTSA reports on it, it was simply to lower insurance costs. If you hit something at 2.5 to 5 miles per hour, the original crash bumpers would absorb that with shock absorbers or spring systems behind them. And there would be no body damage or no damage to repair, or very minimal, possibly the little rubber strip on the edge. That has gone away. That no longer has any bearing on anything. With the matching fascia that makes the car look like it hasn't got a bumper, that gets damaged. I was rear-ended in a collision, about 3 years ago in my company vehicle. $800 damage at 2 miles an hour. That's it. The paint, the replacement of the bumper, and the styrofoam support area behind it. Yes, there's styrofoam. In some cases, there's plastic honeycomb. But there's something behind those plastic bumpers that you see on new cars today to absorb the crash. It costs more now to repair those crash bumpers than the insurance company had hoped. So it did the same thing. And Dennis Burnham brings up the water bumpers. Yeah, they came hot. I remember they even put them on the RTD buses here in Los Angeles. And what that was a plastic bumper that held water. It had round little pop-offs that when the bumper was hit in an accident, the water would absorb the energy and the pressure would come out through these holes and the water would fly over everywhere. They put them on the buses here. No such thing as a $500 fender bender anymore. Yes, you're right, Kenny, and that is a problem. Denny Sanders, Oh, that went through quick because Corey was going here. 70s started a great era for cars, but it went quickly into a bad era of performance. Yes, emissions and performance started waning during the 70s. Fun fact, Corey says, when he was involved in a demo derby, he would instruct people to crease. To crease? To crease upper body lines to make the cars bend up instead of down. Okay, good technology. And Dennis Burnham says Culver City was what? Well, you didn't finish. Yes, RTD had those bumpers, and they tried to put them on cars as a way of creating a crash bumper that was reusable. Didn't really work and didn't last long. And the other problem is it added weight. Plus, water evaporates. So the other thing, as you went around a corner, the water would move around and slosh around. Created problems. Dennis Burnham, Culver City Police Department used the water bumpers. Yeah, a lot of people tried them. It was a good idea in basic concept for crashing. It wasn't a good idea for turning. It wasn't a good idea over long periods of time because not only did the plastic degrade, the water evaporated. A lot of things coming out in safety, and the weight of the vehicle now is greater. As I said, Mustangs, Camaros, 3,900 pounds. Challenger, over 4,000 pounds. Charger, Chrysler 300, 4,400 pounds. Now, these cars are small in comparison to the cars of the past, but they're heavier by far greater amounts because of the safety that is added in crumple zones and crash safety. Yeah, Cassie, you probably didn't hear of water bumpers. They were way before you were even thought of. They were back in the 60s and early 70s. What era was the water bumper? 60s and 70s, Kenny. And you never heard of it? Look them up. Water bumpers. They came out. I remember them, like Dennis is saying. They were on police cars. They were on the buses here in Los Angeles. When I was a kid, one of our neighbors had a 63 Impala with water bumpers. Yes, they were ugly, Denny. People, they were looking at it. The people who would buy the first iPhone or the first cell phone also wanted the highest tech they could get in their cars, and that was considered high tech back at the time, water bumpers. All right, this is Hot Rod Bob. You've got gas, the morning edition. We talked about crumple zones, crash safety a bit in cars, and why new cars weigh so much. And again, just want to remind you of the people that help bring this to you every morning. I know it's backwards, but you can figure it out. Valley Head Service, Irwindale Speedway, Irwindale Drag Strip, Tucker Tire, BUA, Beach Underwriting, Moon Eyes, and Service Tech. Please patronize these businesses, especially nowadays when you need car parts, when you want to go out racing, when you need that engine rebuilt. I've got a VHS engine in my 57 Ford, and it is running sweet. But check it out. I'm Hot Rod Bob. You got gas, the morning edition. Now remember, I'm reposting the morning edition. All past gas is going up on YouTube right now. You can search it by looking for GAAS-Great American Auto Scene, GAAS, or Bob Beck. Go to my page there. Subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll get notified when I put new stories up. Also, talking about cars and two tired guys. That's right. Randy Cardoon and I have partnered up. We formed Two Tired Guys. That's right. And we are posting a lot of stuff there. Jim Rossi says, people might not know all salvage titles are not due to wrecks. That's correct. Some of them are due to theft. Some recovered vehicles are stolen, and they settled already, and the original owners, they have no damage to the cars. Yeah, one of the things that happens, too, with some of the salvage title cars, if it's, LAPD found this out, was the people stealing it had all the parts that were missing from the car, so they took enough to get it totaled. Then they bought it back at auction and put the parts back on again. It had a salvage title. There was nothing wrong with the car. But yes, they do that. An AMC safety car used the front door interchanged with the rear door on the opposite sides. Yes, they did. And that was to save money. Replying to Jim Rossi, law, not jaw? What? Okay, well, whatever that was about, I missed that. People might not know. Yeah, okay. We'll go back into that. All right, guys, you have a great day. Please look us up on YouTube, Two Tired Guys Productions, talking about cars, GAAS-Great American Auto Scene. Take care. Thank you for tuning in. You are great gasaholics, and I appreciate you being here. You have a great day. I'll talk to you again tomorrow, and we might be doing a Zoom show tonight. GAAS, the Great American Auto Scene, on Tuesday nights. I'm going to get with Randy Cadoon, see if he's available, Anna Octane, and Joe Walla. See if we can all get together. If we can, watch us here on Zoom. I'll post the link if we're going to do it, and you can be part of the show. That's right. All right, Jim, no problem. Guys, you take care. Have a great day. David and Linda Patton, thanks for tuning in. Take care, folks.